creature like that, I wouldn't ever die.
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Why, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows.
I forgot to start with sound effects. Oops. Oh my gosh, and my freaking voice changer isn't working. What the nuts? Oh my gosh, I was right on it too. I was sitting here waiting. I was ready. I was ready to freaking go. Oh my gosh, horrible. Shame on me. Shame on me. I have lots of trouble with this. Hold please. I'm working on it. I've got to get these sound effects going right. I don't know why this has so much trouble. Ugh. Yeesh. I think that'll do it. I think that'll do it. Let's try it.
Ooh, there it is. There it is. Let's go. Four young men, one remote lake, a beam of light that should have passed like any other strange moment in the wilderness, but it didn't. What followed was missing time, fractured memories, and identical nightmares, each more vivid than the last, and when the truth was finally pulled from the depths of their mind, they all remembered the same thing. Craft, beings, something they were never supposed to see. Tonight on Beyond the Shadows podcast, we are discussing the Allagash Abductions.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome in. Wow, a little low. Camera's a little low. Camera's a little high. Yeesh. Camera was a little high. We're good now. We're good. Oh my gosh. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Season 2, episode 33 of Beyond the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Victus, and tonight we are discussing the Allagash alien abductions. Weird little stories. Weird little stories, not gonna lie. Oh, geez. There's always something. I swear, I used that trigger like 3 times before I started streaming. And all of a sudden, it just decides to quit working. I don't understand. Just had to disconnect to reconnect. It's a little triggering device, something like a stream deck. Any hoots and hollers, welcome in everybody. I said it once, I'll say it again. Episode 33, Season 2, Beyond the Shadows podcast. The Allagash Abductions. This took place back in 1976 in Maine. A wild little ride. I'm trying something a little different tonight. Something I don't usually do. But I had somebody else write the script. So I don't know what's coming. I know very, very little about this case. And, we're going to take this ride together. And if this format seems to work, we're going to stick with it. So, that being said, let's move forward. But before we get too far in, I got some shout-outs. We have new subscribers on YouTube. Yeah, that's right, we do. Let's give a big shout-out, a big round of applause to JD. Thank you for subscribing on YouTube. Danny Suarez Comedy Channel also subscribed on YouTube. That's right. And also a thank you to Zombie Shark for subscribing on YouTube. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. 3 new subscribers this week. We did really good. I'm very pleased. Thank you to all our new subscribers. I noticed the views on YouTube are looking great. So if you're watching this on YouTube, thanks everybody for watching. Stick around. It takes me a second to get going, but I promise, don't go anywhere. You're gonna love what happens today. All right, shout-outs are out of the way. I still haven't done the intro for this yet, but we're gonna keep rolling with it. We have news and paranormal. Let's get going. Let's get going with it. So as of 8/31/2025, here's your latest news in paranormal. The Occult Museum, part of the late paranormal investigator Ed and Lorraine Warren's home in Connecticut, is now accepting bookings for overnight visits. Bookings are priced at $1,999 per night and will be offered from November 1st to February 15 of 2026. Comedian Matt Rife and YouTuber Elton Castille, who purchased the property, announced the bookings in late August of 2025. Well, you know what? It's late August today, so the museum area will still be open to overnight guests for 4 hours from 9:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. under the supervision of staff, and guests will also have access to a $25,000 kit of paranormal investigating gear. The new owners noted on their booking website that they are not liable for, quote, physical or spiritual afflictions that may occur. Yeah, don't know what that means. If you've got that kind of disclaimer, I don't know what kind of stuff you got going on. Any hoots and hellers. In early 2025, the U.S. Geological Survey published a research proposing a scientific explanation for the Somerville, South Carolina's mysterious ghost lanterns. For generations, a local legend told of a spectral woman searching for her decapitated husband with a lantern near a railroad track. The USGS reports suggest the lights may be earthquake lights. Geologists hypothesize that minor earthquakes along a local fault could cause gases like methane to seep from the ground to create a glow. In other news, a new Connecticut-based company called Veilwalker Paranormal began offering immersive, historically grounded tours in late August 2025. Led by a fifth-generation medium, the tours visit historical cemeteries and sacred sites across New England. The private tours are available both day and night for guests 18 and older. Kind of slim pickings tonight, folks. Not a lot going on. The paranormal news is inundated with stuff about the Annabelle doll, and I actually had to go in and cherry pick some stuff to make sure we didn't have Annabelle doll stuff. It's interesting note, though. The complicated matters reports surfaced that the Annabelle doll was, quote, missing from Rivera's room at the time of his death. The doll later appeared in a fire that broke out in a separate storage facility. So take that for what it's worth. And that is your news in paranormal. Thank you. So we got a great show tonight, and before we go any further, I have a serious question for all of you listening, all of you watching. Very serious. What shirt are you wearing today? Yeah. What shirt are we wearing today, folks? I've got a new one for you tonight. Special ordered this bad boy just for the show. And check this guy out. Check it out. It's got all of the cryptoids on it, and it says respect the locals. It says you don't see them, but they see you. Look at all the good ones on there. All of them. Pretty cool little shirt. I'm excited to wear this tomorrow. Doing a little bit of shopping with the wife. Labor Day sales. Let's go. So that's what shirt I'm wearing tonight. Thank you very much. without further ado, which is actually one of my pet peeves that I hear YouTubers and podcasters say, well, we're going to jump straight into this. Oh, awesome. We're ready to go. We're ready to go. We've got Act 1 lined up. So I say again, I have not actually read this script. I had somebody else write this script. So I don't know precisely what happens in this story. So I'm hoping this format works out pretty well. Wait just a darn second. Hold the pahone. Let me check Twitch right quick. Do we have a new subscriber? Or a new follower? Are we up? Are we up? Let me see. 57, 250, or 157. Our little widget at the top of the screen is wrong. Refresh that bad boy. Yeah, it's showing the wrong number. Whatevs. It's fine. Not many people are watching anyway. It's cool. We're good. We're good. It's just we have 157, not 156. Ooh-wee, big numbers. Yeah, look who's balling now. Yeah. Look out, Howard Stern, here I come. All right, folks, let's get into it. I'm hoping this is I hope this is going to be as good for you as it is for me. And also, if you notice, the background's getting a little more spooky. What with the spooky season underway, got a couple of new additions here. A couple giant Lego heads. Got those today. And we also got an old, wait, I gotta lean this way. Right here. It's a mini CRT. The screen's like 8 inches across. And it doesn't work. I messed with it for like 4 hours now, and I can't get anything discernible to show on it. Gonna fiddle with it some more, but until then, it's gonna remain right here in the screen. Right here. Playing static in a spooky kind of way. It's a cool little TV though. I got it for like $10. Cool. Whatever. I'm a CRT junkie. I'm a retro gamer. So, any hoots and hollers, let's move forward. Let's move forward. Are y'all ready to dive into the Allagash alien abductions? I hope you are, because I am. And you're going to hear this one a lot tonight.
Ancient astronaut theorists propose.
And this one.
I'm not saying it's space aliens, right? But it goes without saying it's fucking space aliens.
True. Goes without saying it's space aliens. We're going to hear all about aliens tonight. Be ready to hear that A word quite a lot. So let's get into it, folks. Let's get the freak into it. Let's, I think I got a sneeze coming. Jeez. Did that camera shake? Because I saw my monitor shaking. Oof. Sneezes hit me hard. Any hoots and hollers, let's move forward. Are y'all ready? Let's get into it. Also, oh wait, I totally forgot. I meant to say earlier, I don't have it fully set up yet. But this is going to be something for the people that come and watch live. I'm going to make a redemption on Twitch that lets you change the camera angle. I will show you the camera. Just got to find it, where'd it go? And oh, there it is. It's an overhead camera. Look, you're above my right shoulder. You're way up here. Hey. Still playing with things. Still getting things worked out. But when the time comes, you will know when it's ready. I'm trying to downsample it to make it look like a security camera or like a weird camera angle from like Resident Evil or something. That's the plan, anyway. I need to turn my mic up just a little tiny bit. There we go. Much better. Well, let's get into it, folks. I know I've said it 3 times now, but let's get into it. In August of 1976, 4 friends, Jack Wiener, Jim and Jack Wiener. So now every time I say Wiener, I got to do the deep voice. Oh, that's a little loud. Sorry. Now every time I say Jack Wiener or Jim Wiener, I'm going to use the deep voice. So, in August of 1976, 4 friends,
Jim Wiener, Jack Wiener,
Chuck Rack and Charlie Foltz, set out to what was supposed to be a simple week-long canoe trip in the wilderness of northern Maine. They were young, artistic, and curious, students of recent graduates from the Massachusetts College of Art. But this wasn't just a college camping trip. These men were raised on the edges of American skepticism and cosmic wonder. While they brought paddles and paintbrushes, they also brought hunger for something transcendent, something beyond the ordinary grind of Boston streets and campus studios. They chose the Allagash Waterway, a remote stretch of interconnected lakes and rivers in dense pine forests near the Canadian border. This was deep country. Let me do that again. This was
deep
country. No electricity, no cell towers, no easy rescue. The route would take them through Telos Lake and down the Allagash River, and eventually to Eagle Lake, Chamberlain Lake, and beyond. Wildlife was abundant, and human presence was almost non-existent. If you screamed out there, only the trees and the sky would hear you. Each of the 4 had a different personality. They shared a tight bond. Jim and Jack
Wiener
were twin brothers, both deeply creative and had a keen eye for detail. Jim was a bit more analytical. He would later study medical illustration, and Jack had a wilder edge. Charlie Foltz was the self-styled leader, athletic, confident, sharp-tongued. And Chuck Rack, more introspective and cerebral, was a fan of science fiction and metaphysics. From the start, Chuck was the most open to the strange. The others often joked about UFOs and aliens, but Chuck believed, quietly and sincerely. He brought along a sketchbook filled with surreal art, strange eyes in the sky, distorted silhouettes of humanoid forms, and geometric patterns that seemed too symmetrical to be natural. He didn't talk much about why he drew these things. He just said, quote, "I dream weird." And none of them were seeking fame. There were no cameras, no journals, and no intention to document their journey. That fact would matter later, when the story unraveled under public scrutiny. The group's trip began normally, days of paddling, swimming, and fishing. By the time they reached Eagle Lake, they were halfway into their route. That night, they set up camp near the shoreline. Something shifted. Jack remembered it later as, quote, a silence that didn't belong. The unusual night sounds, frogs, insect loons, faded to nothing. The air hung heavy as if weighted. They ate a quick dinner and decided to fish at night. It was hot and they didn't have much luck during the day, so they launched their canoe just after sunset, taking with them a large flashlight they rigged to shine like a beacon. The idea was to keep the camp visible as they fished in the dark. It was Charlie who first noticed the light. He pointed upward toward a brilliant object in the sky, far brighter than any star. It hovered silently, pulsing blue, red, and yellow at first. The others assumed it was a planet or a plane, but it didn't move like either. Quote, "It was just sitting there," Jim would later say, "like it was watching us." Then it moved. Not slowly, not drifting like a headlight. It jumped, as if space itself folded and snapped forward. One moment it was across the lake, the next it hovered directly above the trees a few hundred feet away. It was a structured craft, not a light. Oval, metallic, with central glowing beam that rotated like a spotlight. The four men sat in the canoe frozen, the water beneath them stilled as if the entire lake was holding its breath. And then that beam of light came down. It wasn't just a glow. It was a solid column, a tube of white light that touched the surface of the lake. The beam moved like it had purpose, scanning the shoreline and then swinging towards the canoe. They paddled like hell. It wasn't just a glow. Yep. Well, leave it to me to mess that up. Great spot to mess that up. Way to go, me. All four recalled the moment with the same urgency. Panic overtook them. They turned and paddled toward the shore, watching the beam as it closed in behind them. But something strange happened. Despite their frantic effort, they didn't remember reaching land. Jack described it later as like a film reel with missing frames. Quote, "We were paddling, then we were on the shore, just standing there, holding the canoe. No idea how we got there." Charlie checked the flashlight. It was dead. They stumbled back into camp, too shaken to speak. They didn't talk about the light that night. Not really. They just crawled into their sleeping bags. And when they awoke the next morning, the entire encounter was sealed off in their minds, like a dream quickly fading after daylight. And here's where things begin to twist. The group had already been out in the water for 20 minutes or so, they thought. The fire they had built before launching the canoe was completely burned out when they returned. "We built it big," Chuck later told investigators. "It should have burned for hours." And when they checked their watches, the timeline didn't add up. Somewhere along the line, they'd lost over 2 hours. But none of them questioned it, at least not then. They were deep in the woods, and adrenaline could not explain a lot, right? They kept paddling the next day, and the rest of the trip, there were no more strange lights, but something had changed in each of them. And it wouldn't be long before the memories started clawing their way back. In the months that followed, all four men began having recurring nightmares. They didn't talk about it at first, but when Jack and Jim compared theirs, the details overlapped too closely to dismiss. They dreamt of being inside a room, metal and sterile. They were naked, paralyzed, surrounded by beings, not humans, not animals, something in between. Thin, tall, featureless. In one dream, Jack lay on the tables, his eyes locked with a creature that reached into his chest with glowing fingers. He couldn't scream and he couldn't move, but he felt it. Jim's version was colder. The creature stared back with dark, lidless eyes and communicated telepathically, saying things he couldn't remember once he woke up. Charlie's dreams were the worst. He remembered tunnels of light and a voice in his head repeating the phrase, "You are not ready."
You are not complete.
For years, the four friends kept quiet. Life went on. They got jobs. Jack struggled with his mental health and eventually became hospitalized for unrelated issues. But the dreams never stopped. If anything, they grew worse. And by the early 1980s, Jim suffered a serious head injury from a fall and began having seizures. As part of his treatment, the neurologist asked him about a possible childhood trauma or stress, and that opened the door. Jim confided in the Eagle Lake incident. The doctor recommended hypnotic regression, and Jim agreed. And what he recalled under hypnosis would chill him and the other three to their cores. He wasn't alone on that ship. One by one, each man underwent hypnosis. They were separated, interviewed by different professionals, and never told what the others said. But somehow their stories matched, down to the cold metal tables, the strange tools, and the alien eyes. And what they remembered most was that light, the one that came down from the sky and pierced the water and took them somewhere they were never meant to go. So cool. That's Act 1, everybody. That's Act 1. That is Act 1, and I'm Flemmy. That's Act 1, so we're looking at like a really cookie cutter alien abduction so far. I'm already having like some ideas about this. I don't feel like everything's on the up and up. Not out of the gate. Something just doesn't set right with me with this case so far. I don't know what it is, but we're going to figure it out. So let's look and see where we're at. The Allagash River. Let me... Yeah, let's flip over here. Excuse me. Oh goodness, didn't mean for y'all to see this yet. Here we go. We're looking at the Allagash River. This is way up here. Yeah, like super northern Maine. Super north. This is almost the furthest point north in Maine. Yeah. So look, here's the Allagash River. It starts here, weaves its way up. And I see Eagle Lake. Overlook Motel. Hold on. Oh, no, never mind. Different Overlook. I got excited. Mad Rock. What is Mad Rock? We have one picture of Mad Rock. What makes this rock mad? U.S. Geological Survey. Okay, cool. Eagle Lake. This is where it all happened. I don't have like a super narrowed down version of where in Eagle Lake. Jeez, these guys canoed the hell out of this place. Yeah, so they started over here and made their way. Jesus Christ. I wonder why it took a week. Yeah, interesting. So this is good so far. I'm not seeing anything. It's like UFO abduction, freaking, excuse me, UFO abduction or alien abduction, hotel or alien abduction or alien cafe. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Ooh, weird. Yeah, but it is out here. So this is a big lake. It is very sparsely populated. I will say that. What is this? Why are there... Oh man, that dude's got a nice slice right there. Yeesh. Yeah, so it's hard to say precisely where they were at here. We don't have anything, any indication, any markers like we usually do with these types of cases. It's very interesting that this big of a case happened and we have nothing to say where it happened. Okay, well, that's the way it is sometimes. So, geez, I said it. I was doing so good. Jeez, I was doing so good. So those of you listening, if you haven't listened to this podcast before, our unofficial drinking game, every time I use the word SO, I'm not going to say it. You're not going to trick me into saying it. We take a drink, and we're thoroughly sloshed by the end of the show. That's the way it goes. That's what we do. That's what we do. So that was Act 1. We're looking at really basic cookie cutter alien abduction scenarios here. Missing time, a light from the sky. This is not the first time that we've seen something similar to this. Let me look at our list of episodes. We do have another episode that was similar to this. Let's see. Yeesh, so many episodes. Hard to really nail it down. The Rendlesham Forest? No, that wasn't it. I've lost it. I don't know where it went. But we did have another episode that was very similar to this, likely in season 1, because most of season 1 just kind of blurs together. Very, very similar to this, where these guys were camping and they saw something in the sky, so they canoed out to it. And then boom, light beam hits them. Bam, next thing they know, they're on the shore and they've got loss of time. So this is, we're looking at very basic, almost fire in the sky-esque type of stuff going on here. We're dealing with lost time. It's interesting that there's red, blue, and white lights flashing. I can't help but draw like a parallel to maybe like early, like military aviation stuff, because it's always been, you got to have blue and red flashing lights, I think, on your plane while you fly. But who's to say that this wasn't like early military, right? It's really, really hard to put a nail in it to decide what exactly happened. So I am pleased so far with what we're dealing with. So up next here in Act 2, we are going to talk about the regressions, the hypnotic regressions, and pulling more details out of these experiencers to figure out what they really seen that night. And, we've talked many, many, many times. Back when Paul was part of the show, he's actually traditionally trained in regression hypnosis therapy, and he shed just a tremendous light on this type of subject. He was here when we talked about the Betty and Barney Hill incident, and both of them went through regression hypnosis therapy to unlock what they had seen that night. If you go back to season 1, we actually did a 2-parter because it was such a big case. Season 1, we discussed them, and we actually listened to their regression hypnosis sessions. So,
cheap viewers on streammoo.com remove the space at STZ4AKXM.
Wow, we were doing so good. We were doing so good. Let's ban this guy right quick. First, we're going to report him. Spam. Yep. Spam. Cool. Yeah, hold on, let me type something in. Spam bot, goodbye. Block this user, goodbye. You're out of here. Ban. Bing bong. See you later. Yeah, we don't do it bots here. Sorry. Cheap viewers on Streamboo. Yeah. Come on. I wonder, are there really people that go to these websites and pay for views? It'd be nice to get traction, sure, but I'm not paying for them. You're just going to lose your money. Any hoots and hollers. Let's, hold on, I get 1,001 notifications. Holy nuts. Oh yeah, we've actioned on your report already. Yeesh, that was fast. Sweet. Well, without further ado, we're going to go into Act 2. Act 2, everybody. Act 2. We talk about our regression hypnosis therapy. Act 2, everybody. Act 2. Let's go. Let's get it. You know what? Let's use a different sound. I think this one might be too loud. That's why I don't use this one too often. Act 2. By the mid-1980s, the 4 men from the Allagash expedition had quietly distanced themselves from the terrifying questions left unanswered that night on Eagle Lake. But none of them had truly escaped it. The dreams continued, morphing from unsettling into intrusive. Night sweats, sleep paralysis, flickers of memories that came without warning, while driving, eating, or simply staring out a window. It was
Jim Weir.
who opened the door to the past. After a head injury left him struggling with seizures, his neurologist noted persistent stress dreams, recommending he speak with someone trained in hypnotic regression. That led him to Raymond Fowler, a respected investigator with MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. Fowler had already built a reputation for documenting complex alien abduction cases with clinical detail. He agreed to conduct interviews and sessions, but under one condition. If any of the others were to be involved, they must undergo regression separately and never discuss the results with each other. Jim agreed, and what emerged was horrifying. The session began innocently enough. Jim was walked through the events that August evening, paddling, the light in the sky, the beam. But then his breathing changed. His body tensed. "It's over us. It's above us again." His voice dropped to a whisper. He described the beam of light as solid and cold, wrapping around their canoe like a tunnel. Quote, "I can't move my arms, my hands, my legs won't work. I could see the others, they're frozen." In the hypnotic trance, Jim saw himself rising from the canoe, though no one was touching him. The beam lifted him effortlessly, weightless, into the air. The light wasn't binding, it was clinical, like a hospital. And then came the craft. He described the interior as metallic and curved, almost featureless. The walls gave off a faint hum, not from machinery, but from material itself. Inside were beings, tall, between 6 and 7 feet, thin with elongated heads, large black almond-shaped eyes, skin that appeared grayish-white, slick like plastic, no mouths, no ears, just eyes. They communicate, but not with words. They're inside my head. Jim said he was placed on a table, naked, cold, unable to move or scream. The beings inserted something into his nostrils, something thin and sharp. He felt it reaching deep, too deep. Then something touched his groin, a metallic object with spindles. They're taking something. They're collecting. When he asked how he felt during it, Jim simply said, observed like a lab rat, but with care, cold care, like we matter only because of what's inside us. When Jack underwent regression, his was resistant, emotional, defensive. But once under, he painted an image that mirrored Jim's almost exactly. Quote, "It wasn't a dream. I saw them. They were real." He recalled being paralyzed as he floated through a glowing tunnel of light, watching the lake fall away beneath him. The air felt thick like syrup. Inside the ship, Jack described the same metallic chamber, but his experience focused on one being that stood out, taller than the rest, darker in complexion, with more defined ridges along its head. Jack referred to this one as the leader. Quote, "It looked at me, not like the others. It judged me." This being placed its fingers, long and jointless, on Jack's temples, and immediately Jack felt as though his entire life was being downloaded. Childhood memories, thoughts, secrets. He was naked in more than body. Quote, "I kept hearing this phrase, 'You are not complete, you are not ready.'" Jack began hyperventilating under regression. The session had to be paused. He emerged shaking and crying, repeated, "They're real, they're still here." Chuck's session was the most cerebral. Under regression, he claimed to remain partially conscious during the abduction. He described watching the others being taken while he floated in a secondary chamber. Quote, "It was like a camera. They weren't focused on me." Chuck saw instruments, tools not made for human hands. One device had 3 prongs that rotated with tiny lights inside. Another looked like a wand that projected symbols into the air, shapes he couldn't read but indistinctly understood as language. "They're studying us," he said, "but not just our bodies. They were..."
Interested in our thoughts?
Chuck claimed that the time operated differently aboard the craft. What felt like minutes may have been hours or seconds. He described a moment where everything froze, sound, movement, even his own heartbeat, as if reality paused. They were experimenting with time, not just us. He concluded the session by saying, quote, "It wasn't just an abduction, it was an examination of consciousness." Charlie had always been the most skeptical, though. Sarcastic. The last person you'd expect to break down, but under hypnosis he broke. Quote, "I fought them. I tried to punch one. My arm wouldn't move." He remembered being restrained on a sloped table, with bright overhead lights that seemed to shift in color as the beings moved. He described a scanner that hovered above his chest, clicking softly as a long silver needle emerged from its center. Quote, "They jabbed it into my ribs. I felt it inside my lungs." He screamed during the regression. The hypnotist had to end the session early. Afterward, Charlie looked pale and silent. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands and whispered, "It wasn't a dream. They touched me. They touched all of us. Wait. They touched who? They touched who now? Wait. I'm going to go quiet after that. Who's getting touched now? Who's getting touched? Let me read that quote back.
They touched me. They touched all of us.
Yeah, sounds a little sexy. I mean, I wouldn't be complained if I was being touched. Come on, aliens, pick me up, touch me. Just saying. Just saying. Raymond Fowler cross-examined the transcripts. The men had never been allowed to compare notes, yet every session overlapped. Identical description of the beings. Tall gray skin, large eyes, telepathic. The metallic, sterile ship interior with no visible doors or seams. Being floated into the craft via a column of light. Emotional paralysis and telepathic probing. Biological procedures involving the groin, nasal cavity, and brain interference. The same phrase repeated across Jim and Jack. You are not ready, you are not complete. Fowler wasn't easily convinced by the alien stories, but this one left him stunned. They were artists, not attention seekers. They gained nothing by going public, only skepticism, ridicule, and fear. After the regressions, each of the four began drawing feverishly. Their sketches showed circular ships, interiors with walls that bent without corners, surgical tables with harnesses and headrests, rows of beings with black, staring eyes, strange symbols like in alien language written in the air, constellations or perhaps star maps viewed from circular windows. Wait, we have pictures. Hold on. We have pictures. Check these out. Some of these are artist interpretations. And then the ones that look like sketches are the ones that they made. They didn't just remember the visuals, they remembered how it felt. Cold, isolating, non-violent, but invasive. Charlie, the last holdout, eventually admitted, quote, "They weren't here to hurt us, but they didn't care about us either. We were part of a process, just one of many," end quote. The four friends never looked at each other the same way again. Their bond remained, but now it was stitched together by something beyond human understanding. They had shared something unspeakable and remembered it too late to make it stop. Fowler published their case in detail, prompting national attention. The men appeared in documentaries, conferences, and interviews, but always hesitantly. They didn't want to be famous, and they just wanted to be believed. And through the cold voice of regression, they had remembered a night that had never left them. And that is the end of Act 2, everybody. The end of Act 2. I need to use the restroom real quick, and when we get back, we're going to kick off with Act 3, but first, a word from our sponsors. Hey folks, it's your host Victus. Thanks for watching Beyond the Shadows podcast. I just want to take a second to ask if you would be so kind to hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment down below. Follow us, whatever you need to do. Because we have no ads, we have no sponsors, we have zero budget. Everything I do sitting here at this desk, and I do it by myself. So if you could take the time out of your day and hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, it would help us out tremendously. It helps keep this podcast ad-free, in fact. But you didn't know that. And if you have your own story that you want to tell, you can even reach out to us. Yeah, it's true. You can reach out to us. Our email is beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com, or you could scan this QR code right here. Yeah, how simple is that? The QR code takes you everywhere you need to go that pertains to Beyond the Shadows podcast. So hit that like, hit that subscribe, drop a comment down below, and if you've got a story you want to hear, or you have a personal story that's something that's happened to you, email us at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You all are so amazing. Let's get this back on the road. Sorry to take up your time. Yeah, I bet you weren't expecting that ad by me, were you? Yeah, I've been busy today. Busy bee. All right, folks, so we've come to Act 3. Act 3, everybody, Act 3. This is the segment where we look at all of the evidence under a microscope. Act 3, everyone. Act 3. Oh, what happened? Oh, what's going on? Do it again. Go. There we go. That was right. That one was right. Act 3. When Raymond Fowler completed his formal investigation and hypnosis sessions with Allagash 4, he knew what he had wasn't just another fringe tale. It was structured, layered, and most importantly, corroborated independently by all four men, down to the most haunting details. Let's switch scenes so you can see these pictures while I'm talking. Cool. Transition didn't happen. It happens. It's fine. It wasn't long before the story leaked beyond MUFON's files. First into local New England radio shows, then syndicated paranormal programs like Sightings. Oh man, that was one of my favorite shows growing up. Sightings, I loved Sightings. And eventually into books, newspaper columns, and late-night TV segments. The Allagash Abductions were now public, and that came with a cost. Raymond Fowler published his findings in the book The Allagash Abductions in 1993, laying out the case methodically. He documented over 30 hours of regression tapes, dozens of pages of drawings, timelines, and interview transcripts, detailed analysis of each witness's story, and physical, psychological symptoms reported post-abduction. But what stood out most wasn't sensationalism, it was the consistency. These men weren't trying to embellish or sell a tale. If anything, they were reluctant participants. Fowler concluded that the Allagash event was among the most credible multi-witness abduction case ever documented. Charlie Foltz and Jim Weiner agreed to take polygraph tests under independent supervision. Both passed. Jack and Chuck declined, not because they feared failure, but because they distrusted the public spectacle already beginning around the form around their story. Skeptics predictably descended quickly. Some pointed out inconsistencies in campfire timelines. Others suggested that the men had fabricated the entire event after the fact, crafting a false memory years later. The most common debunking theory was one of skeptics love most is sleep paralysis and suggestibility. Critics claimed the men may have shared a vivid dream, later enhanced through leading questions during hypnosis. But those close to the case knew that explanation didn't hold water. Ray Fowler had separated the men throughout the entire process. The hypnotists were not MUFON operatives or believers, they were licensed professionals. And the dream theory crumbled under the weight of the matching visual details, the timeline gaps, and the continued psychological symptoms that each man displayed. And beyond the regression sessions, Fowler and others monitored the men's behavior in day-to-day life. None of them sought monetary gain. They avoided UFO conventions, refused interviews, and declined multiple documentary appearances. In fact, Jim and Jack Weiner both showed signs of PTSD, night terrors, dissociation. In Jim's case, occasional seizure-like episodes triggered by loud humming or bright white light. Even their art changed. All four began producing increasingly surreal and sometimes disturbing work. One gallery in Massachusetts refused to display Chuck's paintings, calling them, quote, distressing to patrons. Charlie stopped painting altogether, and he had said that every time he picked up a brush, he saw those eyes. One of the more intriguing pieces of evidence was something so mundane, most overlooked it. Remember the large fire they built before going fishing? It had been constructed with heavy logs to serve as a beacon, and when they returned from the canoe trip, they found it completely burned out. Yet they believed they were only gone for 20 or 30 minutes. Multiple fire experts consulted on the case stated that such a large fire to be fully extinguished in cold, hours must have passed. This subtle detail became the anchor point in the Fowler's investigation. Unlike hypnosis or memory, a burned-out fire is tangible. It provided physical proof that something happened during that lost time. And in an unexpected turn, Fowler's investigation prompted other people to come forward. Locals in the Allagash region who reported similar sightings in the summer of 1976. One forestry worker reported a, quote, white dome of light hovering above Eagle Lake that blinked out like a candle around the same time of the week that the canoe incident happened. A fishing guide reported strange circular indentations in the grass near Chamberlain Lake, and a group of rangers allegedly saw a, quote, bright oval shoot across the sky silently during that same season. None of this could prove abduction, but it supported the timeline. Fowler believed that there may have been a flap, a cluster of UFO events centered around the Allagash waterway during the late summer of 1976. So years after the incident, Jim and Chuck presented the original drawings to psychologists unaffiliated with the investigation. Without knowing the context, the doctor was disturbed by the repetition of medical symbolism, especially the table imagery, the instruments, and the central eye motif. The doctors concluded that the men had likely experienced a shared traumatic event, and their subconscious minds were attempting to process it through symbolic repetition. He didn't use the words alien abduction, but he did use the words trauma, deep and unresolved trauma. So it's interesting they're talking about a flap. So for those of you listening, a flap is, think of, what was a good flap? A big flap was in the Roswell, New Mexico area shortly before and after the alleged Roswell incident. There were many reports of aliens and UFOs before and after the initial incident. And this is what they're calling a flap. The flap is this sudden influx of sightings that have to deal with not explicitly aliens and UFOs. Sometimes the flap will involve other paranormal related things. So we do see a lot of times where alien UFO activity happens. We also get similar activity that feels like poltergeist activity. This would also be included in the flap. The flap is very relevant. This happens every time there's a great sighting or a great interaction. It's a flap. You know, it could go weeks, a couple months out before, and weeks to a couple months after. This is what we're calling the flap. The flap is really interesting. You don't hear a lot about the flap. I keep using the word flap.
The flap.
It's not just a convenient word. Think about it. It's just a large surface that covers an area. This is what we're talking about. In a linear timeline, we're covering a large area of that timeline. I think this is our first, very possibly our first case that references the word flap. During Project Blue Book, it was a very prevalent word. Flap was used all the time during Project Blue Book. So it's interesting that it hasn't trickled down into the zeitgeist of colloquialisms used when referencing alien UFO abductions. So by the late 1990s, Jack Weiner suffered a complete psychological breakdown. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, though his doctors noted that many of his hallucinations involved lights, telepathic voices, and floating sensations, all drawn directly from the abduction memories. Skeptics jumped on this point, pointing to his mental health as proof that the entire story was fabricated, but his doctors disagreed. In fact, one therapist wrote in a case note, quote, "Jack's trauma is not rooted in fantasy, it's rooted in something that occurred long ago, which he cannot reconcile or escape," end quote. Jim Weiner, his twin, would later say, quote, "Whatever happened to us, it changed him. Jack was always more vulnerable. The memories hurt him the most," end quote. So by the early 2000s, all four men had withdrawn almost completely from public life. They refused further interviews. They declined to participate in several mainstream productions. In a rare radio interview, Chuck Rack said, quote, we didn't ask for this. We went camping. We didn't want the story. It came to us. And once it did, it didn't let go," end quote. Charlie Foltz was more blunt. He said, quote, "The people who believe us don't need convincing. The people who don't never will. So what's the point?" End quote. In later years, Fowler would stand by the case as one of the most solid abduction accounts ever recorded. even after investigating dozens more. He wrote, quote, "The Allagash case challenged me as an investigator, as a man of faith, and as a scientist. In the end, I could find no motive for deception, only 4 men carrying a secret too heavy for most to understand." End quote. The story of the Allagash abductions wasn't just about the lights in the sky or memories under hypnosis. It was about the belief under pressure. Under pressure? Pressure? Yeah. Maybe I should drink a little bit more. It was about belief under pressure. About 4 men who faced ridicule, trauma, and endless doubt and still refused to recant. Their lives were never the same, and neither was the world of ufology. Ufology? Kapow. What's up, Cozad? How's it going? I saw you come in here. How are you this evening? Welcome in. I'm glad to have you. Tonight we are discussing the Allagash alien abductions that happened back in 1976. How are you this fine evening? We're glad to have you here. We are very glad. Now I'm curious. What does Google Translate say that the correct definition of ufology is? Ufology? Ufology. I'm going to say ufology. Ready? Here we go.
Ufology.
Oh, ufology.
Ufology.
Yeah.
Ufology.
Yeah. Ufology.
Ufology.
Yeah, thanks for slowing it down. I appreciate that. Ufology. I guess that makes sense because it's a UFO. Ufology. It's not an UFO. Whatever. It is what it is. Thanks for showing up, Cozad. I appreciate you being here tonight. I saw you followed the channel a while back. I appreciate you so much. I'm glad to have people in here. We don't get many folks in here. Glad to have you. Thank you so much for being here. But yeah, we've come to the end of Act 3. And we're going to start looking at the patterns. Like, what's the consistency? What's the patterns in their stories? How do they align with each other? And generally, when you have a group of people that deal with alien abduction, you don't get parallel stories. You get branching stories. They're all just a little different in some way or another. But for some reason, these 4 individuals have perfectly parallel stories. Four perfectly aligning cases. And we're going to break down the patterns in their stories. So this is Act 4, everybody. Act 4. Let's get going. So what happened to Jim, Jack, Charlie, and Chuck in the August night of 1976 wasn't just a one-off event. It wasn't isolated. It was unique. And as Raymond Fowler continued to document the Allagash case, he began receiving letters, calls, and emails from people across the country and even beyond describing an eerily similar experiences. Men and women from different walks of life speaking different languages with no knowledge of each other were describing paralyzing beams of lights, missing time, featureless gray beings with large black eyes, cold metallic rooms, telepathic communications, and a terrifying feeling of being studied. The deeper Fowler looked, the more he realized the Allagash 4 were part of a larger pattern. So let's rewind just over a decade before the Allagash. In 1961, in the forests of New Hampshire, that's where Betty and Barney Hill encountered a strange craft on a lonely road. They too experienced missing time nightmares, and after hypnosis, which, if you go back to season 1, we actually played the hypnosis tapes, they are haunting. Absolutely haunting. memories of being medically examined by humanoid beings with large heads and emotionless faces. Barney described a black-eyed figure staring into his soul, and he wept during his regressions. And, that was one of the most haunting pieces of audio that I think we listened to on this podcast, because you have a husband and wife who were stopped on a dirt road during segregation, no less. So you can already imagine, emotions were high. And initially they thought that they were being stopped by police or military. But when they did regression hypnosis therapy, they realized that they were taken aboard a craft. And in these regression tapes, they go from a strong husband, the protector of the family, a strong wife, to mush. And they're both sobbing and crying in these audio tapes. You really, if you haven't gone back and listened to the Betty and Barney Hill episodes, go back and listen to them, because they are chilling. They will rattle you to the core. I still think about those audio clips. They are haunting. Absolutely haunting. And I think that's what really I think that's what really sets apart the regression hypnosis sessions apart from a standard first-hand account, is when you do the regression, you get the emotion involved. And the emotion becomes pure and unfiltered when you're doing a regression hypnosis session. So go back and listen. If you haven't listened, go back and listen. It's a fantastic episode, or 2 episodes. Then, their story was the first major abduction case in the United States, but it was far from the last. So yeah, that was the Betty and Barney Hill incident was the first case in United States history that documented a human being taken aboard a craft. And that's why the Betty and Barney Hill case is so important, because it set the bar for what we think today as an alien abduction, going aboard a craft, seeing the large gray eyes, or the large black eyes of the gray aliens. It started with Betty and Barney Hill. It didn't come from anywhere else but Betty and Barney Hill. But also, let's go back to, what was that, like 2-3 episodes ago? The Pascagoula abduction. In 1973 in Pascagoula, Mississippi, 2 men were fishing at night when they saw a glowing object descend. They were seized by robotic creatures with pincers and floated into a ship. And one of them later experienced a complete mental breakdown. The physical evidence? Puncture wounds on both of the men's arms. And just 3 years later, in 1976, the Allagash 4 were taken under an almost identical circumstances. So we can see that the flap here isn't just a season in the area, but almost the northern half of the United States, stretching down to some southern parts, in a span of 20 years. But then there's also the global phenomena. These incidents weren't limited to the U.S. In Antonio Vilas Boas in Brazil in 1957, a gentleman claimed he was taken aboard a craft and forced to engage in sexual activity. Yeah, forced to engage
in sexual activity
with a pale-skinned female alien. He returned with burns and a strange rash. The Buffalo Edge abduction in Vermont of 1968, 2 camp counselors saw light over a lake, experienced missing time, and under hypnosis described floating aboard a craft. A, quote, leader figure watched them. The Zanfretta case, Italy of 1978, a security guard reported multiple abductions by tall reptilian creatures, passed multiple polygraphs, and his sightings were witnessed by co-workers. The Ilky Moore case in UK of 1987, a retired police officer took a photo of a small gray being behind and later recalled an abduction via hypnosis. The photo remains controversial but still compelling. And despite vast cultural and geographical differences, the stories converge. The entities are nearly identical. The methods, abduction, examination, telepathy, return, repeat like a script. And most terrifyingly, so do the phrases. You are not ready. You must forget. We will return. The Allagash case didn't just validate the abduction phenomena, it raised deeper questions. What are these entities? Where do they come from? And why are they doing this? So let's break down the leading theories. Each of these are as fascinating as they are unsettling. So theory number 1. Extraterrestrial biological entities, EBEs. This is what the government's going to call them, EBEs. The most popular explanation, the beings are aliens from another planet, possibly from Zeta Reticuli, a star system frequently linked to abduction lore due to star map Betty Hill sketched during hypnosis. See, like I said, we go back to season 1, we talked about this. She was able to, while under hypnosis, sketch out a star map accurate to the date and time of when she was abducted. A star map. The focus on reproductive organs, genetic sampling, and the use of telepathy suggests advanced technological evolution and a motive rooted in biological decline of their homeworld. Jim Weiner, one of the original 4 of this case here, he said, quote, I think we were used, our genetics, our memories, maybe our souls, but I don't think we were meant to know what happened, end quote. So theory number 2 is interdimensional entities. Some researchers, including physicists and parapsychologists, believe that the beings don't come from outer space, but from parallel dimensions. These theories align with reports of time distortion, teleportation, and entities that seem to phase in and out of reality. Chuck Rack himself leaned toward this theory. He said, quote, they weren't physical like we are. They didn't move through space. They moved through us, end quote. Under this model, abductions are incursions from adjacent realities where beings with superior awareness of time, thought, and matter intersect with our worlds in targeted events. I am personally one of those who subscribe to the interdimensional entities kind of thing. I like it. It makes the most sense. When you think about it, we're looking at, we never really see the UFO approach. We never really see, off at a distance, the UFO coming and making its way through the hills and cutting through the trees. It's always like, poof, it's there. Right there in front of you, right? And once it's there, it does its thing and then zip, it's gone. Very rarely do we get instances where the UFO is seen flying in, focuses on the experiencer directly, and then you see it fly away. Very rarely. So I feel like, personally, that this lends to the idea that we are dealing with something interdimensional. If you really want to put a nail in it, the concept of travel, traveling near the speed of light, it's going to be near impossible. Coming from another planet doesn't really make sense through the lens of physics, right? However, if there was a branch of physics that could transcend dimensions, you see where things start to make a little more sense. Like, we don't detect them because they're not physically part of our dimension. We can't detect them because we have no means or understanding of the physics outside of our dimension. Right? Am I crazy? Am I crazy? Yeah, you could say I'm crazy. It's fine. I've been called crazy my whole life. Totally fine. So let's get into theory number 3. Theory number 3 says genetic harvesting and hybrid programs. This theory is rooted in the consistent focus of reproduction, the sperm-egg extraction, and bizarre reports of alien-human hybrid children. Many abductees report being shown hybrid children years after their first encounter. Jim Weiner recalled a dream, possibly a suppressed memory, of being led down a hallway lined with glass tanks filled with fetal creatures that looked human but weren't. This implies the long-term agenda, possibly to preserve their species using human DNA or to engineer a new kind of being, one that can live in both worlds. And again, this is not far-fetched. This is kind of the basic idea outside of evolution, outside of the Christian concept of how we became to be on this planet, is the seed theory that we were placed here. And the basis of the concept is a dying civilization goes out to planets that can sustain life. They go down, so let's say these aliens show up, scoop up a chimp, splice the splice the DNA, poof, you get a human. If you really go down the rabbit hole, it's hard to discern the branch between chimps and apes and Homo sapiens. Like, the amount of natural selection it would take to branch a human from an ape is astronomical. Right? So who's to say that there wasn't an incident where, extraterrestrials came down, spliced extraterrestrial DNA with chimps, apes, poof, you've got Homo erectus, humans. It's not crazy, just saying. Just saying. So theory number 4, military abductions. Another chilling possibility is that some abductions are carried out by human agencies, or at least with their cooperation. Under this theory, government or intelligence groups simulate alien contact using hypnosis, drugs, and advanced technology to create a false memory or to test mind control techniques. While the Allagash 4 showed no signs of military interference, some believers argue that if real abductions were occurring, powerful groups would want to study or replicate them. Charlie Foltz once said, quote, "I don't know what's worse, that it was aliens or that it wasn't," end quote. Interesting. This theory has been around for a long, long time. That, maybe we aren't seeing extraterrestrials, but we are seeing military playing with technologies that they have. It's not far-fetched. What's the best way to test a technology that you're unsure of if it's going to come out right? Test it on citizens without their knowledge, right? It's not far-fetched. So lastly, we come to theory 5, the collective trauma or psychological projection. Of course, the skeptical view remains that alien abductions are psychological phenomena, shared delusions, sleep paralysis, or false memory syndrome. But this view struggles with the consistency across thousands of cases and the detailed matching of experiences among unrelated individuals. And it doesn't explain the polygraph results, or the burned-out campfire, or the fact that none of the Allagash 4 changed their story, not even decades later. I agree with this. I don't think that it's a shared psychological projection. It would take a really, really very, very niche, very specific set of a type of environment for this to happen. And I don't think that the damage would have been caused to just one of them. I think it would have happened to all of them. We see these things with like exposure to MK Ultra. Individuals who are set with mind control things, they have a shared delusion, a collective trauma, and that creates the psychological projection of Well, the sound just stopped. That was really weird. It creates that false memory. But there is evidence that we can look at. And we're not seeing any of this evidence in this case. But across every theory, one element remained consistent: the emotional imprint. Fear, powerless, intrusion, in the sense that we are not in control. The Allagash 4 didn't just describe a physical event, they described the violation of reality itself. A moment when the universe pulled back the curtain and what stared back didn't blink. So by the late 1990s, researchers had compiled hundreds of abduction cases, yet one had resolved the fundamental mystery. Yet not one had resolved the fundamental mystery. Why do these beings appear mostly at night? Why the obsession with lakes, forests, and isolated areas? Why do they erase the memories only to let them bleed back through dreams? And why did they repeat the same clinical script over and over again across continents and decades? If the Allagash 4 were telling the truth, their story remains uncannily consistent. Then, either we are being visited, studied, and manipulated by something not of this world, or something already inside our own minds knows how to lie in wait until the stars are out. So the Allagash case, like so many before it, remains open. Not because there's no evidence, but because the evidence defies simple explanation. It blurs the line between psychology and physics, science and myth. And in doing so, it forces us to confront the unthinkable. That we are not alone, that we are not in control, and that someone or something knows exactly where to find us when the lights go out. So that brings us to the end of Act 4. We're probably going to run a little short tonight. Chat's been kind of quiet. It's fine. It happens. We're going to wrap up Act 5 and do our own thing. We're gonna run and do what we can. Gonna peel away for just a second. Hold on, folks. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we're back. We're back. We've come down to Act 5, Echoes from the Water. We're going to wrap this thing up into a nice, neat bow tonight. Y'all ready for Act 5? Let's go, Act 5. Years have passed since the summer night on Eagle Lake, and the world has moved on for Jim, Jack, Chuck, and Charlie. Time never flowed the same again. Something happened to them, something real enough to fracture memory, rattle belief, and to haunt every quiet moment that followed. The names may not be as widely recognized as Travis Walton or Betty and Barney Hill, also in Season 1 if you guys are interested. But to those who study the abduction phenomena closely, the Allagash 4 were legends, not because they wanted to be, but because they couldn't deny what had happened. The men reunited only rarely in the decades that followed. The bond remained, though it had changed. Each dealt the weight from the experience differently. Jim, the first to undergo hypnosis, became an advocate for abductee rights. He spoke at conferences and supported others trying to process their own strange memories. Over time, he withdrew from the public life and limited his experiences. He once said, quote, "Telling the truth doesn't bring closure, it brings more questions. You'll never get answers, just deeper echoes." Jack, however, struggled the most. His schizophrenia diagnosis marked a deep decline in his ability to function in everyday life. Friends described his hallucinations as vivid reenactments of the encounter. The eyes, the light, the recurring messages that they weren't ready. Chuck left the scene entirely. After a few years of limited interviews and public appearances, he stopped responding to media requests. Some say he moved out west. Others believe he remained in New England. He reportedly told a close friend, "We weren't abducted by aliens, we were changed by them." Charlie, the most grounded, grew increasingly guarded. In his final interview, he said, quote, "I don't care if people believe us anymore. I only care that it happened, that we remember," end quote. The site of the abduction, Eagle Lake in the Allagash Wilderness, remains largely untouched. No monuments, no plaque, just thick trees, cold water, and silence. Hikers sometimes report strange lights in the sky. Campers have said that they feel watched near the lakeshore at night. Most who pass through the area never know what occurred there 50 years before. And to this day, the Allagash case stands out in UFO research community for several reasons. It involved 4 witnesses. There was physical and psychological discrepancies. The hypnotic regressions were conducted separately and professionally. All 4 witnesses told the same story for decades. None of them profited off the event, and each of them suffered because of it. The level of consistency is rare, yet no proof has emerged. No video, no DNA, just the fire that burned too long. The memories that clawed back through dreams, the sketches, the tears, the silence. But what if it's all true? Suppose everything the Allagash 4 remembered is true. They were taken, examined, and altered by non-human intelligences. If so, deeper questions emerge. Why 4 art students on a remote canoe trip? No political pole, no military secrets, no platform, nothing that made them special. That may be the most disturbing detail. Perhaps the most unnerving encounters don't happen to people in power, but perhaps they happen because those who go unnoticed, unprotected. People like you, people like me. So look up the next time you're far away from the city. When the stars are bright and the world is quiet, you might notice something shifting across the sky. A ripple, a light, a silence, or maybe nothing at all. Once you've heard the story, the night feels different. So we've come to the end, folks. We're a little earlier than normal. It's fine. It's okay. So let's break it down. What do we think? Is this real or not? This is one of the few cases where we don't see lots and lots of public recurrence in the area. You know, we looked at Google Maps to see if there was a plaque set up. There's not. We couldn't even find the exact location on Google Maps. So the first question we always ask ourselves, who's making money off of it? We got nobody making money. Nobody. This is good. This means that they weren't making a story up for publicity. So I think, based on this evidence, that the Allagash alien abduction is real. I think this really happened. Usually we have something that throws up a red flag, but this one doesn't really do that. And I have a hard time really articulating how I feel about this, but I feel like this really happened based on this evidence, based on this research. So, that being said, thank you everybody for watching tonight. Thank you for listening. If you're here still at the end, thank you for staying for the whole show. So few people really do. We're not a huge production. We don't have a huge budget. We have like a $50, maybe $100 a year budget. Thank you for being here. I want to say if you've got a story of your own that you want us to talk about, you can reach out to us at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. Scan this QR code. It's above me over here. It'll take you to all of our links. Thank you to all our new subscribers on YouTube. Thank you to our subscribers on Spotify. Thank you to our subscribers on Twitch. If you love this and you want to catch it, we are live every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come check us out live, interact with chat, and we will talk about it. We're getting out of here, but before we go, I got a closing monologue for you.
Four men, one lake, a night erased and then remembered. Whether it's extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or something that lies just outside our understanding, it left a mark. So ask yourself this: if they were telling the truth, what else were they not ready to remember? So if you find yourself in a lake, in the middle of the wilderness in the dark, and you see a light, don't follow the light, but do make sure you follow us. Beyond the shadows.
Good night, everybody.
Creature like that, how would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows.